Hello and welcome to Global Sources Live. My name's Tom and I'll be your host for this episode of Buyer Fireside Chat. Before we get stuck into that though, I should mention that this is a sort of promotional tie-in with the upcoming Sourcing Festival, an online event on globalsources.com, which will offer a whole lot of great sourcing deals, and you can click the link in the description to register for access to that. Guest today is from GlobalTQM and here to talk about, issues with logistics and getting things from one place to another, and that is David Hoffmann. And let's see if we can bring him on now. Hi, David. How are you doing?
Good, Tom. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your time. Where are you calling us from, actually?
So I'm in Sydney, Australia, and it's about nearly 8 p.m. tonight.
Oh, right. Are you working? You're working late for us. I appreciate that. So thank you.
No problem at all. You're welcome.
All right, fantastic. All right. So, before we get into the nitty gritty of our discussion topic, could you tell us a bit about yourself, maybe, and about GlobalTQM? Give us a bit of a backgrounder on, what you do.
Yeah, sure. So, Tom, I live in Australia now. I lived in Hong Kong and China for 19 years before coming out here a year ago. We have a sourcing and quality control office in Shenzhen, and we've been developing products, sourcing suppliers for many years. That's what we do. And we help a lot of e-com sellers and a lot of small entrepreneurs of all sizes, including big retailers, find reliable suppliers, develop products, source products, and handle the whole supply chain for them. And I guess really, what's different about us is it's from all different sizes. If you're a small startup to, a seasoned, experienced seller, we've got a whole team on the ground in China that can help. And we really make sure that you have a direct relationship with the manufacturers. And we just help you build that and nurture that rather than try act as a middleman in between that.
That sounds pretty good. I mean, I suppose it makes sense to start with that, the upstream part of the e-commerce process, finding manufacturers, finding the people who are going to provide the products that you then go on and sell. I mean,
yes.
Especially if you're like a sole trader, someone who's maybe starting out and doesn't have, huge amounts of capacity to you can't fly out to go look at factories and so on. What are some kind of things you should bear in mind when you're starting out researching about potential suppliers? What for example are some red flags you should watch out for in the sort of early days, so to speak?
So Tom, I think the typical way to go about it if you're not traveling would probably be online through all these websites like China, Global Sources, Alibaba, etc. I mean, there's a lot of access to suppliers. I think some red flags to look out for is suppliers aren't always what they appear to be. You got to try and figure out who the real manufacturers are or who the trading companies are. Not that either are good or bad. I mean, both have their place, but you just really need to know who you're dealing with. And I just think some red flags probably to me are when they're too willing to do anything or they're quoting prices that are too cheap. It's often unrealistic. So I would just say don't let price be the first judge of whether or not you want to pursue a supplier, number one. And number two, really, take the time to go deep, to get to know the people and communicate with them. I think, communication's key. And if you can't communicate well, that's really the first red flag. And then, I mean, there's a whole ladder of things, checklist, I kind of mentally go through in dealing with the supplier to establish, their credibility.
Oh yeah. What are some of the things on your checklist?
Okay. Yeah. So firstly, capacity. I always like to understand, what is their actual production capacity? Can they make our orders? And not just actually, in that our orders might be so big or somebody's order might be so big, can they handle it? It's sometimes, are they the right size manufacturer for you? If you're starting and your quantities are smaller, you don't necessarily want to be working with the big manufacturers because they probably won't give you the attention you need. So it's really it's finding the fit for where you're at. I think that's really important.
Yeah, you want to be one of the bigger customers they have, right? Like not just sort of,
exactly, or at least be of a size that they're willing to take your order and don't find it more of an annoyance than anything else, because you'll just get pushed down the line and you won't get the attention.
Sure. I mean, sorry, go ahead. What I feel like you had another checklist item you've had to launch into.
I mean, there's a lot, so I do think whether it's large or small, you want to understand the size and capability of that manufacturer. Communication is always a top of my list. And the things I'm looking for there are the skills, not just their ability to speak English or converse, but it's really what are their skills? Are they educating me about a product, about the production process, and are they knowledgeable? Because if they're not, there's a good chance they're either not the manufacturer or possibly just a low quality manufacturer. You almost want that communication to be so fluid that they can talk you through their quality, which is the next major thing to understand. And that is, how do they check their quality? What processes do they have in place? What is their philosophy as a company on quality? What are their expected return rates? How do they deal with market feedback? All those questions will help you build confidence in the company. Obviously you get things like certifications. Are they experienced in your country? Do they have the certifications you need on your product? That's important. It's not uncommon for a manufacturer to say, yeah, we can make it for Australia, for example. But if they haven't actually shipped to Australia, it's more of a willingness to do it than actually understanding things that you might not even know. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not to say that, just because someone is making something for Australia for the first time, that's a bad thing in itself. But you need to know that in advance, that you can't assume that they have everything under control when it comes to their shipping. Maybe you need to kind of help them out with some things. And yeah, I guess you could well be willing to do that bit of helping out. But yeah, you're right. And I guess there's that issue of sort of, I suppose, being a little bit vulnerable. Is that part of it? Like when they can admit things they don't know about, is in a way kind of a sign of
that's actually a good way to, that's a really good way to put it. It's vulnerable and honest. If they don't know something, to say that, it's far more important, because ultimately, and I see this so often, where a buyer will expect the factory to be responsible for everything, which of course isn't in our ideal world. We'd all love that, but it does ultimately come down to you as the buyer, because you're going to suffer the losses, you're going to suffer the reputation loss. So it's really important that you take that ownership, and having a supplier that's trustworthy and honest and transparent with those things really makes a big difference. And you giving them that comfort to do that, by the way, because I think if you create a tone where they're too scared to tell you, oh, we don't have this, or we don't have that, or we need to get it still, there's going to be a delay, you start getting funny stories, and you'd rather have honesty from the beginning.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, you don't want them to be kind of doing that thing. I mean, yeah, you do hear those stories where, because a supplier is trying to kind of solve the problem before they have to tell them about it, the buyer about it, then they end up kind of leaving it to really the last minute, when it's too late to kind of even mitigate the issue of like a missed order or shipment or something.
Exactly. And then that's when you really get into the real risk territory of them doing something, to taking shortcuts, or doing something you might not be aware of. So it's much better to set the tone, such that they understand you'd rather work through problems with them and solve it together. But it's critical that you validate everything along the way.
Yeah, because those problems that you don't know about, they're going to have downstream effects for you. Once you're shipping things out of the warehouse in wait, now I need to think of some Australian cities, in Newcastle to to some shops around the New South Wales area. There you go. That's some Aussie geography.
You did well.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you're blissfully assuming that those boxes are full of products that are fine, but then the customers get them and they're going to be pretty upset. Which I suppose actually, especially for e-commerce buyers, that's another thing to think about. The kind of the fulfillment from the point of purchase out to the customers, whether they're retailers or individuals. I mean, what do you find as some sort of kind of pitfalls for e-commerce sellers in particular? Like there are kind of traps that would be easy to avoid if you knew about them, that happen a lot.
Yeah, so I think in terms of the e-commerce fulfillment side, I think people sometimes underestimate the experience the customer has when they receive a product. And that's, for example, simple things like the packaging and the whole unboxing experience. That's your first impression. And I know personally, when I buy stuff online, when it comes really poorly packaged, the first thing I think is, oh, this is cheap Chinese product. Where did they buy this from? Is it even good? When it comes really nicely packaged, with little customized message cards or just a bit of thought behind it, I naturally feel like, oh, these guys care about what they do because they even care about the packaging. And when I receive it and it's nice and I enjoy unboxing it, I'm already biased towards liking the product and wanting to enjoy the product. One of the things I find as well that's really important is that's often overlooked is unboxing the product is actually your first opportunity to communicate directly with the customer, and that's really a powerful point, a powerful moment, because if there's anything you want them to know, for example, hey, if you've got any problem at all with this product, call us or live chat with us or whatever, we will solve it within 12 hours, for example. That's great to know, because already you're starting off on the right foot. Whereas I've seen products you arrive in, there's a long-winded instruction manual, and that message is there somewhere embedded in the instruction manual. And you go, well, probably 2% of people read that. Whereas one simple, clear message will completely transform your relationship, and it'll bring down your returns, and give that customer service that people want. So, that customization, that messaging is really critical. One of the other things that I just mention is, and I've personally been through this experience when I shop online, is partnering with the right logistics partners is crucial. I actually bought something from the US. I was so excited to get this product. As it turns out, the product is phenomenal, but it took me nearly 2 months to get it because it was routed all over the place. And the company was good, they were helpful, but they admitted there's nothing they can do. It's gone out, they've got a tracking number. The problem was the logistics company they were using were looking for the cheapest rate and routing it all over. Whereas if they just paid a bit more or had a better partner, that nearly turned me off. I actually demanded a refund, to be honest, after a month, even though I hadn't got the product. And they didn't do it, but I could understand why. But it was frustrating. It put me off.
Yeah. I mean, because like you say, there's even something as simple as the little card inside a box. I mean, it's a cost-effective way to win over the customer, isn't it? You feel it does work. It's so simple, but it absolutely works. And then that a 2-month delay, that's the opposite. You already resent it by the time it arrives. Right? So
Exactly.
It's a lot of work to get over. I mean, what are some ways you can avoid? What's a red flag for a logistics agency? Is it a too good to be true price? Is that kind of red flag number one?
I think it's experience, being able to quote definite delivery times and lead times. When the ranges are too wide, it's generally not a good thing. I think if they've got too many partnerships, sometimes that happens, especially if it's global shipping. You'll find sometimes they go, oh, well, we use this service for this country, this service for another country. If there's too many links in the chain, it's probably a red flag. or if they can't give you rates straight away, it's definitely a red flag, because you'll find they're probably not shipping regularly to those countries. So I would, it's just like, look for the guys that are doing the volumes in those places, because they've got the infrastructure. And even if they're a little bit more expensive, I would go with that safety any day.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like it's pretty negative for the. Is there any kind of pro to using the smaller kind of delivery agency, or you think not really? You should kind of go with the bigger ones whenever you can.
Yeah, I think it's normally price. You go for the smaller guys, and that's where they try to compete. I'm not sure that's a bad thing. I just think reputation and experience is more important. You maybe try a new delivery service with some orders, but not all orders. And as they prove themselves, or if they've got clients they use that you can talk to and try and verify things, that might be helpful. But of course, tracking information as well. You want to be able to track it. I know that costs more usually, but it really does make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's a customer service thing as well. I mean, I know when I order stuff that's online, I start to get, I don't know if it's really a negative perception, but it's certainly, I'm kind of in limbo until it arrives, when sometimes the package goes into a tracking black hole. It gets to California, then it gets on a plane, and it says, well, now we don't know. And you think,
exactly.
So,
and if you think about it, you own your whole customer experience, from when they're shopping, to the descriptions they're seeing, to the product images, to your accuracy of inventory, that you can buy it and get it delivered on time, and even when they receive the product off sale. So you own everything. But in that whole customer journey, there's this third-party weak link that nobody says, oh, well, that wasn't your problem, that was your logistics company's problem. They just go, you guys are terrible on delivery, right? It's like this little weak link in that whole customer experience, that can just really hurt and damage your reputation.
Yeah, you got to watch for that. Well, I tell you, let's bring this back to a happier kind of topic. I want to come back and kind of talk about customized packaging a bit, and making people feel good and not bad. Is that something that is you typically find that suppliers will kind of arrange as part of a customized order, or is it more practical to go to like a specialist kind of packaging provider and get them to kind of hook up with your supplier?
No, I think supply. Well, look, it depends. If you're doing a bulk order out of China, you can definitely include, message cards in there that are a little bit more generic, maybe not addressed to the person, for example. But you can definitely make sure all the boxing and packaging materials are done at the manufacturing level, for sure. So you've got less handling later. But if you want to really customize something, it's probably got to be done at your pick and pack center, where you might be handwriting a card, or you might be even printing a personalized card with each order, and they inserting it with the bundle. It's just you just got to look at it. Or if it's a very customized product you're printing on, that's normally a secondary process, right, which is done in your local country at the logistics center.
Okay, so I kind of get it. Oh God, sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Oh no, that was it. I was saying, so like the principle of like do it as early on in the process as you can, but not too early. Like
exactly. Because remember, you got volume and bulk versus personalized something one-on-one. They're quite different. Unless you're lucky enough to have a supplier in China that's drop shipping for you, and can do that personalization, but normally you need a little bit more scale for that.
Yeah, I can imagine that's that's the point at which you definitely need to be among the top clients for that supplier, isn't it? To get that kind of attention.
Absolutely. You probably got to put one of your own people there to manage that.
Oh yeah, that's a interesting thought. Although I think perhaps outside the scope of this discussion. Anyway, so David, top tips as ever. Thank you for that. If people want to get in touch with you or GlobalTQM, how do they do that?
Yeah, really easy. Just go to globaltqm.com, and on our website there's a schedule a discovery call, and that's free, and they can talk to me or my team, and we can discuss their scenario. We love to talk to people.
All right, fantastic. Well, David, thank you very much for your time. It's been lovely chatting to you, and I hope we can do it again sometime.
Likewise, Tom. Thank you so much.
All right, cheers. Goodbye.
Okay, bye-bye.